What's up? Hope everyone's having a good day and is ready for another video in the series we like to call Underrated Throwers. Now today we got Frantz Kruger from South Africa and Finland. Later in his career he went to he competed for Finland. He is the bronze medalist at the 2000 World Champs. Olympics. Jesus. The 2000 Olympics. A 70-meter thrower. A 70, I think his PR is 70-32. Which, is pretty good in my book, You 70 meters is, aight. No, I'm just kidding. It's pretty fucking good. Oops. Sorry. I didn't mean to curse there. My B. But I think he's severely underrated. And I think he's very unique. I couldn't find a good quality video, not saying this is, of him reversing. He reversed later in his career. And if you want to look at something very weird, look at Frantz Kruger doing a reverse, because it is very, very strange. But he didn't really, well, I guess he threw like over 66 with it, but when he threw 70 meters, he threw it with a non-reverse. And I think he's a very underrated non-reverser. Actually, he's one of the furthest non-reversers of all time. Throwing 70 meters non-reverse, I can't think of very many people who have done that. The only other person I can think of is Jürgen Schultz and Lars Riedel. Although I'm not sure if Jürgen Schultz, I think Jürgen Schultz threw over 70 with a non, I think. But I know for sure Lars Riedel threw 71 with a non-reverse, and that's, I think, the furthest non-reverse. But I think Frantz Kruger is probably top 3 in terms of distance and non-reversing. Oh, actually, sorry. Oh my god, I totally forgot about Robert Harding. Jesus. I'm sorry. I think Robert Harding's PR is a little further than Frantz, so he might be he's top 5, I think, non-reversers ever, in my opinion. And nobody talks about him because he competed for basically 2 decades. He competed, his longevity was crazy. And throwing over 60 meters when he was close to 50 years old. And just crazy longevity, crazy good technique, very unique technique actually. If anything, kind of throws a little like a woman. And normally I don't recommend that for men's disc, and because women's disc and men's disc, I think the women's events and the men's events are just totally separate sports, in my opinion. They're just completely different. Not completely different, but women can get away with a lot more stuff than the men can, because the men's implements are heavier than the women's, and the women's to compared to how strong and powerful they are, compared to how much the implements weigh, is just a crazy ratio. I mean, if you don't believe me, the world record for women's disc is 76 meters, and the men's is 74. But if you look at the top 25, and you look at, I think there's been 10 women over 74 meters in history, which isn't, granted, they were all East German and Russian, Soviet women who are rode it out of their mind. But even still, that's still insane. All right, to throw 76 meters in discus. So, and yeah, so I think he's very underrated. One, because he's a bronze medalist and nobody talks about him, and I don't think a lot of young people know who he is. Not saying I'm very old, but one of the goals of this series is so the younger generation can appreciate and kind of look at older generations of throwers and how technique has evolved or not evolved, and just a whole bunch of, and just gain respect for some of the people who paved the way for what the sport is now, which I think the sport right now is at peak popularity right now, especially shot put, at least in the US. So, which is good. I'm glad. I want the sport to grow. It's one of the best sports, in my opinion, one of the most underrated sports, throwing. We have some of the best athletes in the world. So, yeah. But that's a subject for another day. Right now, we're here to talk about Frantz Kruger. Now, I think this was from 2007, this video. And I think he was still competing for South Africa during this time. But yeah, I think this is like a 66 or 67 meter throw. I forget what the title said in the video, but yeah. So let's watch its regular speed. Alright. So very simple technique. One thing I really want you to notice is how far back he keeps that disc. Alright? Which is actually insane that he's able to finish it with such velocity, considering on how far back it is. Like, him and Lars Riedel probably are the best at holding the discus back and, like, actually, like, not pulling off the finish. Like, most men do not wind this far back simply because it takes so much strength to finish it with that much stretch in it that far back, the discus, because, you know, it's just, but if you can handle it and you're flexible and strong enough to actually finish the disc like that, I mean, theoretically, the further back you hold it, you know, the further it will go, because it has a longer path, there's more stretch, more time to work the disc. So theoretically, if you can do it, you know, it will lead to further throws. But a lot of people cannot do that. I mean, the fact that he's this far back, I mean, he is insanely mobile. He has all the attributes of a non-reverser. You know, I think he's around like 6'9" or something. Like, he's tall. He's big. And I just like his technique, actually. It's just super simple. Gets every position pretty much spot on. There's not really that much I don't like about his technique, honestly. I mean, but okay, let's break it down. So, winds. I want you to notice really simple wind, almost like a Gerd Cantor wind, except Gerd Cantor would just stop there. Would have his chest a little more up, but he's a little down, and then kind of puts it up. But I like this forward tilt a little bit just because it promotes relaxing the back and not being super tense. When you have a super upright back in the wind, it tends to lead to you just being super tense and not getting a lot of stretch reflex in the throw, and then rushing the throw and muscling the throw. But he's a super relaxed wind, super comfortable, pretty even distribution of weight in his legs. Turns all the way, and then really nice here. So I would like, what I coach is keeping this right leg, or your sweep leg, firmly planted on the ground. So you'll see here, his heel's on the ground, and then he kind of picks it up, turns, stops it, and then picks it up. But I mean, it's still staying grounded, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, he could get better stretch through his groin and his hips if he just kept it planted. But I mean, as long, like, keep the heel planted on the ground. But I mean, that's like a nitpick. I mean, it works for him. But the important thing is he doesn't pick up until actually pretty far. I mean, this is past 90 degrees. Like, his toe is pointed this way, which is actually insanely flexible. The fact that he's able to keep his right grounded that long. And let's see, his stack. So his armpit, I mean, he could have got, his armpit is over the middle of his foot, and I guess his knee a little bit. It could be a little more over, but I mean, that's also a nitpick. He's over his left side, so it doesn't even matter. Like, he has enough weight, and he's stacked over it. You know, his head, knee, and ankle and foot are all in line here, so that's fine. He's over his left. He's balanced. Turns his left foot all the way to the sector. Doesn't over rotate. Doesn't under rotate. Really like this head. This where his head is. How he's looking at the sector. Almost kind of like Christian Che, a little bit. Gets a little bit. So you'll notice with him, and I'm starting to see a lot of parallels between him and Lars Riedel. In terms of technique, because both of them didn't hop up, but had a super big pre-turn in the middle, which I personally love for a non-reverser especially, but in discus usually. Just because you have a bigger ring, so I think the pre-turn gets you down and gets you turned faster. Shot put, it depends on how tall you are, but in discus, usually the best people in the world pre-turn, and especially if you look at any of the top non-reversers of all time, they all pre-turn in the middle. And what I mean by pre-turn is that normally like your right foot in the middle would be like facing this way, but because he pre-turns, his right foot's facing the back of the ring. And what this does is if you can hold your chest to the middle, to the sector, and I know this is a front view, but I think the sector lines are this way, so he's holding his chest to the middle. If you do that and then you sweep really hard and think about like saddling a horse. So like if you watch like a cowboy movie, if you've ever ridden a horse, this is the way I like to describe it. Like you kind of mount the, okay, maybe not mount the horse, but like, yeah, screw it. Mount the horse. Like they kind of throw their leg and their hip over to one side to get on the saddle of the horse. It's the same kind of movement you kind of want with your sweep leg. So he's here, and you see how he kind of moves. He doesn't kick up, all right? But you see his right butt cheek and his right hip kind of go, let me get a different kind of arrow. Kind of go here. Okay, I can't really draw it, but you see how it kind of goes up and around a little? But he's not jumping. So that's a very important thing. No matter what kind of style you do, whether you pre-turn or don't pre-turn, you never fully extend your left knee out the back. And I'm speaking for right-handed throwers. So your left knee is always going to go forward. Actually, it's going to drop down, which he does really well. And if it fully extends, then you just jump, you know. Think about it, like every time you're off the, think about it, like it's hard to jump when you don't bend your knee, when you keep your knees bent, all right? But when you fully extend, you're going to come off the ground, all right? Because that's just the way your body works. So you notice any good thrower, any competent thrower, they do not fully extend their knee, their left knee out the back. They will keep it bent. All right, because that keeps them grounded and keeps them going forward. You don't want to go up because that's wasted energy. All right, you don't want to jump up. But when you go forward with your left foot, with your left knee, when you drive forward and sprint forward with your left side, while going up and around with this right side, what that does is create a tremendous amount of stretch in your torso and the disc in your right side. All right, which even puts it further back and even puts a lot more pressure on the disc in a good way. All right, so here he's still looking at the sector. You don't really have to, but I mean, if you can do it, cool. All right, lands, really nice stack. All right, everything. I hate doing front view videos, but his butt is facing the sector, which is, in my opinion, really good. I use the cue, put your right butt cheek to the sector when you sweep, because that just gets you turned. All right, and then kind of drops the right heel a little, but then picks it up immediately and works the ground super well. All right, so that's why I really like the pre-turn, because one, I think it also speeds up your left side because you turn so fast in midair. It also speeds up the left side, the left foot getting to the front of the ring, so you catch really deep. To catch the discus really deep. So if you notice, so his left foot grounds there. Look how far back the disc is. All right, now he has all of this time to work it. All right, so that's why I really like that as well for non-reversers, because non-reversers, since you're not reversing, you got to keep that disc way further back than a reverser. All right, because you just need the added stretch. All right, stupid video keeps moving. All right, so you want that, once he gets here, beautiful. So you notice, and people would say that this is wrong, keeping this right knee bent. The left knee bent in the front. But you got to think about it. What causes you to reverse? Extending this left knee while the right knee is bent. If he extended the left knee, he would just reverse. All right? So if you want to be a true non-reverser and you look at all of them, they all have a slightly bent. Now, I'm not saying like bend it a lot. Like he's barely bending it, but he's doing it just enough to keep grounded, and you want to stay grounded. All right? That's the whole point of why you can throw far with a non-reverse, is because you can stay grounded and work the disc a lot longer than a reverser. Now, the benefits of a reverse is, one, you can get a little more out and a little more height on the disc. All right, and you can use your legs a little more. The non-reverse is specifically, I tend to like a true non-reverser if they're really tall, insanely mobile, and can have some of the strongest blocks ever. All right, that's when you can throw and are strong enough to handle the mobility you need to throw far with a non-reverse. All right, it takes a very specialized athlete. Just like I like comparing it to like the glide shot put. You know, you can still throw 20, like 23 meters with a glide. I still believe that. Ulf Timmerman did it. He was the first person to do it. There's been several that have thrown over 22 with the glide. All right, it's not dead. You just need to find the right athlete. And the same with non-reverse. A lot of people don't non-reverse anymore, but when you think about it, some of the most decorated discus throwers in history are non-reversers. Lars Riedel, 5-time world champ, Olympic champion. Robert Harding, the 3-time world champ, 2012 gold medalist in the Olympics. Jürgen Scholl, Olympic champion, former Olympic record holder. Lars Riedel was a former Olympic record holder too, world record holder, and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's insane how good you can be non-reversing. The other thing you can be non-reversing, and why it's also beneficial, is you can be a lot more consistent if you're good at it. There's a reason why all these like elite non-reversers are some of the best ever, and consistently win, because they can consistently produce the same. A lot more can go wrong in a reverse than a non-reverse, if you're good at the non-reverse, because the non-reverse, you don't leave the ground. So as long as you're competent in the non-reverse, you can be a lot more consistent. Just like in glide. Glide, a lot less things to go wrong. And that's why gliders are usually a lot more consistent than rotational throwers, on average. All right? It's the same thing with the non-reverse. There's just less things that can go wrong. Now, it's really just the finish. But, still, the finish, you can, and I'm speaking from experience, you can do everything right. If you have a really bad finish and don't release a discus correctly, it won't go very far. All right? And the release in the discus and how the discus flies matters, I think, that and javelin matters a lot more than shot and disc. All right? Just because wind affects those javelin and discus way more than hammer and shot. All right. So that's my opinion. And yeah. So let's get back to this. So catches really nice, really far back, and then boom, just turns through it. Really solid block. Really solid. That disc is out of his hand here. I know it's hard to tell. That disc is out of his hand. Fully turned. So you notice, he turns, stays grounded, blocks, right arm just freaking cranks. And you notice, what keeps a non-reverser in the ring, all right, what keeps a non-reverser in the ring is, I want you to look at what his right foot does. You see how it just kind of slides? Almost like a javelin. How javelin throwers go on the outside of their foot to stay in and slow their momentum down once they release. It's the same kind of thing. This dragging of the foot with the outside, you don't want the inside. You want it with the outside because if you go with the outside, that means you actually turned your right foot all the way, which he does. All right. And then that dragging really slows you down, which is good because the discus is out of your hand and you need to stay in. And these are the differences. Like when I coach, when I coach and I have reversers and we're doing non-reversers and stuff, that's why I don't really care if they foul out the front, because they're not true non-reversers. So I don't care. I don't really work on that with them. I mean, to a certain extent, I don't want them just flying out the front of the ring. But I mean, if they like do like a little foot foul or like kind of just step out, but they're still in control, I don't really care, because the reverse will make them stay in. And if anything, I like that for reverses, because that teaches you to get your hips all the way through and then kind of mimics the replacing of the feet in the reverse. So actually, I prefer that. All right. So, but if you're going to be a true non-reverser in competition, you don't want to extend this left knee, which he doesn't do. All right. And then you want to practice dragging this foot to slow down your momentum. All right. So, and then really nice recovery. I think, stop the video on the recovery. Man. But if you also notice, his block doesn't really move until the disc is out of his hand. But it really doesn't move at all. And you notice it's also a flat foot. So in a non-reverse, you want that left heel down on a non-reverse, just because it makes you, it's just a better block, and it just keeps you a little more grounded. Because if you're on the ball of the foot in blocking, you're going to have a tendency to want to reverse, because, you know, you're going to want to extend this left knee. So being on the heel of the foot makes it a little easier to bend the knee a little and stay grounded. All right. And then really nice upper body block. So you notice right here, his upper body does not move at all. Like his left side of the upper body does not move at all. Really. I mean, it moves like a tiny little bit. But I mean, he also has so many, like it takes so many forces in your body to throw 60 plus meters. And especially 66 plus meters. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to be hard to hold the block. All right. But overall, I think he's a pretty good technical model for a non-reverser. I think he's criminally underrated. You know, one of the furthest non-reversers of all time. And Olympic bronze medalist. With the only two people beating him are Lars Rito and Virgilius Alekna. You know. So, I mean, that's pretty freaking good. So yeah. And he's also made some world champs finals and the Olympic final in 2008, which shows you the career, like that he's still making Olympic finals from 2000 to 2008, which is kind of crazy. So yeah. I hope you guys learned something, and in the video description I'll link his personal best, height, weight, and notable accomplishments. And yeah, see you all in the next time. Thanks for watching.